6 words. That's all it took for Caitlin Clark to remind the entire WNBA who actually controls the conversation, not a press conference, not a defensive tweet storm, just 6 carefully chosen words that exposed the massive gap between perceived power and actual market value. And the best part, the person who threw the first punch never saw it coming, because here's what nobody's talking about. This wasn't just a social media clapback, this was a calculated demonstration of leverage, influence, and the kind of strategic patience that separates stars from superstars. Many of you picked up on this immediately. You saw exactly what was happening while sports media was still trying to figure out who was right and who was wrong. But let's filter out the noise and look at what really went down, because the story behind the story reveals everything about power dynamics in professional sports. If you believe understanding the game within the game matters more than surface-level drama, hit that like button right now. It tells us you're here for the real analysis, not just the headlines. July 2025, Indianapolis. WNBA All-Star Weekend was supposed to be a celebration. Nearly 17,000 fans packed Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The energy was electric. The league's biggest names were gathered under one roof, and behind the scenes, something significant was brewing. The players had coordinated a statement that went beyond basketball. They showed up wearing matching black shirts with a message that couldn't be ignored: pay us what you owe us. This wasn't just merchandise, this was activism. The WNBA's collective bargaining agreement was set to expire in October, and the players were drawing a line in the sand. Currently, WNBA athletes receive around 9% of league revenue. Their NBA counterparts get 50%. Many of these women play overseas during the off-season just to make ends meet. The message was clear, unified, and absolutely necessary. The timing made sense. The platform was perfect: maximum visibility, maximum impact. But then Kelsey Plum decided to add her own commentary, and everything changed. Plum was sitting in the post-game press conference next to Sabrina Ionescu, the Los Angeles Sparks guard, who also happens to be vice president of the Women's National Basketball Players Association, had a platform and apparently something she needed to get off her chest when discussing the coordinated shirt protest and the morning meeting that organized it. She said something that absolutely nobody asked for. Quote, "Not to tattletale, but 0 members of Team Clark were very present for that." End quote. The room went silent for a second. You could feel the shift. Sabrina Ionescu, sitting right next to her, couldn't hide her reaction. She rolled her eyes and fired back sarcastically. That really needed to be mentioned. Even in that moment, you could see the discomfort written all over Ionescu's face. She knew exactly what Plum had just done. What was supposed to be a moment about collective action and fair compensation had just been hijacked by what looked like a petty shot at the league's biggest star, Caitlin Clark, who wasn't even in the building that day. Now here's where context becomes critical, and here's where the narrative Plum was trying to push completely falls apart. Caitlin Clark wasn't at that activism meeting. She wasn't playing in the All-Star game. She wasn't avoiding anything. She was at home recovering from a groin injury that had been bothering her since mid-July. The idea that she was somehow dodging player activism or choosing not to support her fellow athletes wasn't just wrong, it was insulting. And let's be very clear about something else. Caitlin Clark is the reason the WNBA is in a position to negotiate better terms in the first place. Since her debut, television ratings have skyrocketed. Merchandise sales are breaking records, ticket prices have climbed, franchise expansion fees jumped from $50 million to $250 million virtually overnight. She brought unprecedented mainstream attention to women's basketball. She's the league's biggest bargaining chip in salary negotiations, whether anyone wants to admit it or not. Yet here was Kelsey Plum, in front of cameras and reporters, suggesting that Clark and her team weren't really invested in the cause. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Social media erupted. Fans called Plum jealous, petty, and short-sighted. Sports analysts weighed in. Colin Cowherd roasted her on national television for taking shots at the one player who transformed the WNBA's entire economic landscape. The criticism came from every direction, and it was relentless. But you know what Caitlin Clark did? Nothing. Not a tweet, not a statement, not a single word of defense. While the internet fought on her behalf and think pieces debated veteran resentment versus rookie success, Clark stayed completely silent. She went about her business, recovery, preparation, building her game. She let the noise happen around her while remaining perfectly, strategically quiet. This wasn't weakness. This was calculated power. Clark understood something fundamental about modern media dynamics. Sometimes the best response is no response at all. Sometimes you let your success and your influence do the talking, and when the moment is right, when the perfect opportunity presents itself, then and only then do you make your move. This is chess, not checkers. And while everyone else was playing checkers, Caitlin Clark was already 3 moves ahead. Fans defended her online. Analysts debated the fairness of Plum's comment. Social media churned with outrage and hot takes. But Clark focused on what mattered. Not the drama, not the criticism, just the work. Engaging immediately would have made her look defensive. It would have validated the criticism and amplified Plum's words. So she waited. She let the backlash do the work for her. She let others spin the story while she stayed above the fray. Colin Cowherd destroyed Plum's logic on national radio. Sabrina Ionescu's eye roll became the viral image that shaped the entire narrative. The court of public opinion had already ruled. And then, precisely when the moment arrived, Clark acted. It came just 1 day later. Kelsey Plum posted on Instagram celebrating All-Star Weekend. Simple caption. What a weekend. Photos of her smiling with teammates at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Standard post-event content. Nothing controversial, nothing provocative. Just a player celebrating a good experience. But Caitlin Clark noticed something Kelsey Plum apparently overlooked. There was a massive Nike logo in the background of one of Plum's photos. And that's when Clark dropped 6 words that changed everything. Quote, "I see that Nike deal paying off," end quote. 6 words. That's it. No essay, no rant, no defensive posturing. Just a perfectly calibrated reminder of the economic reality that everyone was pretending didn't exist. Caitlin Clark has an 8-year, $28 million deal with Nike. It's the richest shoe contract in WNBA history. Kelsey Plum's Nike deal? Significantly smaller. The gap between their market values isn't close. And Clark just exposed that gap with surgical precision. The internet lost its mind. Fans erupted with reactions ranging from shock to absolute delight. This wasn't just clever. This was masterclass-level social media strategy. Clark had waited for the perfect moment, found the perfect opening, and delivered a response so perfectly executed that any comeback from Plum would have looked defensive or desperate. And you know what Kelsey Plum did after that comment? Absolutely nothing. Radio silence. The conversation was over. Clark had ended it without breaking a sweat. Before we go further, drop a comment right now. Do you think Clark's response was justified? Or did she take it too far? Because this question gets at something deeper about power, respect, and how the game is changing. We want to hear where you stand on this. Let's talk about what this moment really reveals, because it's about so much more than Instagram comments. This is about leverage. This is about who actually controls the narrative in professional sports and why market value matters more than seniority or titles. Kelsey Plum is a talented player. She's a former All-Star. She's vice president of the Players Association. On paper, she has institutional power. But Caitlin Clark has something far more valuable in modern sports. She has market power. Market power means networks pay more to broadcast your games. Market power means arenas sell out when you're playing. Market power means merchandise flies off shelves with your name on it. Market power means expansion fees skyrocket because investors believe your presence makes the league more valuable. And here's the uncomfortable truth that Plum's comment forced into the open. The WNBA needs Caitlin Clark far more than Caitlin Clark needs the WNBA. That's not arrogance. That's economics. Clark could walk away tomorrow and have opportunities waiting. International leagues would pay her millions. Media companies would hire her as an analyst. Brands would line up for endorsements. She has options that didn't exist for previous generations of women's basketball players. And that fundamentally changes the power dynamic. The league, meanwhile, would lose its biggest draw, its most marketable star, and the momentum that's finally making women's basketball financially sustainable. Reading between the lines of Plum's original comment reveals something many of you picked up on immediately. There's resentment brewing among some veteran players. They see a rookie getting more attention, more money, and more influence than players who've been grinding in this league for years. They see sold-out arenas and national television coverage that never existed before Clark arrived. And instead of recognizing that a rising tide lifts all boats, some are viewing Clark as a threat rather than an opportunity. But here's what that resentment misses. Caitlin Clark isn't taking anything away from anyone. She's creating opportunities that didn't exist before she showed up. Every player in the WNBA benefits from her presence, whether they want to admit it or not. The increase in salary cap, the improved travel accommodations, the better facilities, the bigger television deals on the horizon. All of that is possible because the league is finally profitable and sustainable in ways it never has been before. And a massive part of that shift is directly connected to Clark's impact. The higher the ratings she drives, the better the next television deal will be for all players. The more merchandise she sells, the more revenue the league generates, the more attention she brings to women's basketball, the more young girls will grow up wanting to play, creating a deeper talent pool and more competitive league in the future. This isn't theory. This is happening right now in real time. So, when Kelsey Plum decided to publicly call out Clark for missing an activism meeting while injured, she wasn't just being petty. She was revealing a fundamental misunderstanding of how power works in modern professional sports. You can't demand better compensation while simultaneously attacking the person most responsible for creating the economic conditions that make better compensation possible. That's not strategy. That's self-sabotage. And Caitlin Clark's 6-word response wasn't mean-spirited. It was educational. It was a reminder, delivered with perfect timing and just enough edge, that market value matters, that some players have leverage others don't, that respect isn't automatically granted based on tenure or titles. It's earned through impact, influence, and understanding the game within the game. The beauty of Clark's approach throughout this entire situation has been her restraint. She could have gone nuclear. She could have detailed every way she's elevated the league. She could have pointed out that Plum's career earnings wouldn't exist without the infrastructure built by players like Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird, the same way Plum wants to critique Clark, but she didn't do any of that. She stayed quiet when it mattered. And when she finally spoke, she said just enough to make her point without burning bridges. That's the mark of someone who understands that long-term success depends on relationships, reputation, and knowing when to exercise power versus when to hold back. Clark wins when the WNBA wins. She loses when the league looks divided or petty, so she conducts herself in ways that elevate the product, even when it would be easier to clap back harder. The 6-word Nike comment was probably the closest she's come to throwing shade, and even that was playful rather than vicious. It was the kind of response that gets people talking without creating irreparable damage. It reminded everyone of her market power without explicitly claiming superiority over other players. It demonstrated confidence without arrogance. And it effectively ended the conversation by being so perfectly executed that any response from Plum would have looked weak. That's masterclass level media strategy from someone who's only been in the professional league for one season. If you want to see how this dynamic continues to shape the WNBA, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because Clark versus Plum isn't over, it's just getting started. And the next chapter of this rivalry could define an entire era of women's basketball. We'll be breaking down every development, every game, every moment that reveals who's really controlling the narrative. 6 words change the conversation, but the question remains: how will the WNBA adapt to a world where one player can command attention, shape narratives, and redefine power in real time. Caitlin Clark isn't just playing basketball. She's rewriting the rules. And if this is only the beginning, the game will never be the same.